Chapter 1. Stoicism Street Smarts for Inner Calm. The muffled clatter of armor and the restless hum of anxious voices seep through the canvas walls of an emperor's tent. Inside, flickering candlelight casts wavering shadows across papyrus pages, illuminating the lined face of Marcus Aurelius. With quiet determination, he sits hunched over his writing table, recording private thoughts amid chaos. Outside, conflict, uncertainty, confusion. Inside, disciplined introspection and clarity, captured in lines he never imagined anyone would read. It is here, on the Germanic frontier nearly 2,000 years ago, that one of Stoicism's greatest thinkers scribbles his final work, the Meditations. Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing a philosophy textbook. He was journaling, reminding himself how to live and lead. Centuries later, these very words would inspire millions of people looking for calm in chaotic worlds. Because one core insight of Stoicism still resonates strongly today. You do not control what happens to you, but you do control how you choose to respond. The Stoics teach that inner peace isn't built on how smoothly things go in life. It relies instead on how we react when they inevitably get rough. But Stoicism wasn't born on a battlefield under imperial banners. It sprang to life far earlier in a bustling marketplace at the heart of ancient Athens. The story goes like this. A wealthy young merchant named Zeno is at sea, transporting precious cargo. But a sudden storm tosses his sailing ship violently, splintering wood and sinking his possessions below the waves. Zeno barely escapes alive, stranded and broke, washing ashore onto unfamiliar soil. Zeno doesn't crumble. Instead, he arrives at Athens and finds himself wandering through the crowded Agarithe city's central marketplace. There, lost and drifting, he stumbles upon a small bookstore, overhearing someone reading aloud from Socrates' teachings. Drawn in, Zeno realizes that wisdom itself far surpasses anything he lost aboard that wrecked ship. Soon enough, Zeno begins teaching his own insights from one particular place, the painted porch called the Stoa Poikile. It's from this very porch stoa that Stoicism earns its enduring name. Zeno wasn't alone for long. Followers flocked to his daily discussions on inner strength and emotional resilience, transforming his patch of the marketplace into a school of powerful influence. To cultivate resilience and peace, Stoics didn't just preach abstract ideas, they built practical tools in their daily lives. The Stoics would visualize negative outcomes regularly, visualizing potential troubles, hardships, or losses. This technique, called negative visualization, helps accept the possibility of setbacks ahead of time, preparing your emotional strength while increasing gratitude for what you currently possess. Another powerful practice is voluntary discomfort. Instead of running from hardship, the Stoics occasionally seek it out on purpose, sleeping on a rough mattress, fasting for short periods, or going without a warm coat in winter. These exercises remind them that discomfort can be faced bravely, that luxury, comfort, or convenience aren't absolute necessities. Facing voluntary discomfort boosts inner confidence and mental flexibility. Perhaps the most useful practice is morning reflection, taking a few minutes when first awake to anticipate challenges for the day ahead and reminding yourself of how you'll meet them calmly. Marcus Aurelius wrote himself this daily reminder: you will meet rude, hostile, selfish people today, but remember they do not know better. You can choose kindness and calm instead. Through generations, Stoicism spread far beyond Athens, gathering remarkable followers, like Epictetus, born as a slave, later freed, who taught emperors and commoners alike that freedom actually lay in one's judgment and emotions, not in external circumstances. Or Senecaon of Rome's richest men, powerful political advisor, yet deeply committed to Stoic teachings. Seneca became personal mentor to Emperor Nero, teaching principles of self-control and acceptance. Though Nero himself famously struggled to absorb those lessons, Seneca's writings have since inspired millions. Today, in our modern era, Stoicism is enjoying a significant resurgence. Professional athletes, soldiers, writers, entrepreneurs, and CEOs frequently quote Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus when pressed to describe their philosophical approach. Tech billionaires discuss Stoic ideas at conferences and on podcasts. Coaches share Stoic teachings inside huddles before a big game. Leadership seminars incorporate Stoicism into corporate training, and shelves of bookstores fill with new books on its practical wisdom for everyday challenges. But why are we so drawn to these ancient words right now? Perhaps because Stoicism provides clear instructions. It is not merely philosophy for philosophers, it speaks plainly to everyday worries and struggles of ordinary people under stress. Here's a Stoic exercise anyone can try today. Take a sheet of paper and list worries or anxieties running through your mind. Review your list calmly, clearly separating each concern into two groups: what is within your control and what is outside it. Then take your pen and cross out every worry that concerns events entirely beyond your influence. What remains on the page are the meaningful actions you can take, the practical steps worth spending your energy and emotions upon. The timeless advice of the Stoics aligns remarkably well with modern psychology insights. In fact, the widely practiced cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) shares deep roots in Stoicism. CBT therapists guide patients to notice how their interpretations of events, rather than the events themselves, influence emotional responses. Just as Epictetus taught centuries ago, it's not external events that cause stress or anxiety so much as your personal judgments about them. Yet Stoicism faces misunderstandings too. A common misconception is that Stoics are rigid, grim beings who suppress emotion entirely. But this misses key nuance. Stoicism is not about eliminating feelings, it's about gaining clarity and wisely judging how much emotional energy to grant toward certain thoughts and circumstances. Epictetus himself describes joy vividly, but emphasizes pursuing joy through wisdom and mindful acceptance rather than rash impulses or fleeting comforts. Stoicism has become somewhat famous today due partly to popular connections woven through movies and internet culture. The Oscar-winning film Gladiator introduces Marcus Aurelius on screen, dramatically depicting him as a wise leader who deeply reflected Stoic virtues, though somewhat altered historically for storytelling. On the internet, Ryan Holiday's widely read daily Stoic website and newsletter reaches millions every morning, providing practical translations of Stoic wisdom into approachable actions for modern life. However, Stoicism inevitably invites reasonable criticisms. For instance, if constantly accepting the outside world is something unchangeable, can we become overly passive, too quick to surrender opportunities for meaningful change? This is a critical debate Stoicism's most responsible practitioners balance thoughtful acceptance with ambitious action. They accept unavoidable circumstances but fiercely change those injustices over which they have meaningful influence. Still, Stoicism offers immediate value in minor, everyday moments too. Imagine you're rushing through a crowded subway platform. Suddenly, the PA system announces a delay. Your body tenses, heart rate rises, frustration bubbling up. But adopting a Stoic mindset, this forced pause transforms into a brief breathing and reflection exercise. Remind yourself calmly, you don't control the subway delay, but you do decide to meet this moment as either frustration or tranquility. The simple mantra Marcus Aurelius shared, "The obstacle becomes the way," captures Stoicism succinctly. Challenges, hardships, inconvenient setbacks all present hidden opportunities, ways to practice patience, courage, creativity, or compassion. And compassion itself opens another crucial question we should carefully explore. Does calm confidence, carefully cultivated by Stoicism, coexist well with empathy, kindness, and compassion toward others? Stoicism provides powerful methods for internal calm, but some traditions pair calmness intimately and intentionally with compassion. Buddhism, for example, offers an intriguing parallel path. Next, let's explore that fascinating connection, the gentle wisdom of the Buddha, and how mindful calm became inseparable from compassion. Chapter 2. Buddhist Middle Way Against Everyday Stress. Imagine yourself standing at a busy crosswalk during rush hour, cars roaring by and honking impatiently, people hustling past you, eyes glued to smartphones, rhythms dictated by tight schedules. Then, unexpectedly, the clear, resonant ring of a meditation bell cuts gently but unmistakably through this noisy chaos. Immediately, something within you shifts. It is small but profound, a subtle reminder that amidst daily noise and constant movement, peace and clarity might always be just one intentional breath away. This simple sound holds deep roots in the tradition founded 2,500 years ago. Let's reflect on the powerful human story behind Buddhism, beginning with Prince Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha, later called Buddha, meaning awakened one, was born in what is now Nepal around 500 BCE into an exceptionally comfortable life in his father's palace. As heir to a tiny kingdom, he was surrounded by riches and luxury from birth. Yet as he grew older, he felt an unexplainable dissatisfaction. His palace walls offered every imaginable pleasure, yet he sensed something missing. Curious and unsettled, he ventured beyond the walls for the first time in his late 20s, accompanied by his chariot driver. Outside, the prince encountered scenes fundamentally different from his palace existence. He saw 4 sights that shook him profoundly. First was a sick person, hunched and suffering. Then, an elderly person, frail with deep lines from age. Next, he passed a funeral procession carrying a lifeless body, witnessing illness, old age, and death. Siddhartha, accustomed to lavish comfort, suddenly realized the universal, inevitable realities facing all humans, including himself. Finally, he noticed a wandering ascetic, calm despite poverty and simplicity, searching for deeper truth. Siddhartha was compelled by these sights to abandon his comfortable life and dedicate himself to finding a solution to suffering. Initially, Siddhartha embraced extreme asceticism, drastically limiting food intake, ignoring comforts, meditating for days. Yet, after years spent denying his needs, he found himself no closer to understanding the nature of suffering. Then came a crucial realization: neither luxurious indulgence nor extreme self-denial brought lasting peace or insight. He remembered a childhood moment, watching a lute player tuning his instrument. If the string is too loose, it won't make a sound. Too tight, and it snaps. Tuning requires precise moderation. Siddhartha applied this simple idea of balance and moderation, what he named the middle way, and quickly afterward attained clarity under the Bodhi tree. Through careful, balanced contemplation, Siddhartha awakened, comprehending life's fundamental truths. This brings us to Buddha's 4 Noble Truths, which, rather than complicated formulas, can actually be simply expressed. Life contains pain. Pain has causes. There is genuine hope, and there is a clear path toward alleviating this pain. Buddha identified suffering itself, what he called dukkha, as central in human existence. By suffering, he didn't just mean physical pain, but also dissatisfaction, stress, anxiety, the unease we feel even when things seem outwardly fine. Next, he said suffering has identifiable causes, primarily attachment and craving, whether for tangible pleasures like money and possessions, or intangible desires such as reputation and approval. We constantly chase pleasure and flee discomfort. But because circumstances always change, this craving inevitably creates tension and unhappiness. The hopeful part of the message states that humans can genuinely soothe suffering by addressing our inner craving and attachment. It's not inevitable or unavoidable. Finally, he laid out a clear, practical path to reach this relief. the Noble Eightfold Path. This Eightfold Path isn't complicated mysticism. It offers clear and practical guidance to reduce distress right here, right now. Let's unpack it step by step in simpler terms. The first step is having the right view, meaning clearly understanding life's truths, especially the reality of impermanence, change, and interconnectedness. Then follows right intention, developing kindness, generosity, and compassion internally. Next comes moral guidelines with right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, right action, acting ethically, causing less harm, and right livelihood, working honorably, considering impact on others. Then move into mental training. Right effort means actively working toward mental clarity. Right mindfulness involves calmly observing experience, moment to moment. And lastly, right concentration, meaning focused meditation that grounds these insights deeply. All these teachings emphasize one key idea: impermanence. Let's demonstrate this vividly with a simple experiment. Picture an ice cube resting in a glass on your desk. At first, it appears firm and solid. Soon you see water droplets forming, then slowly gathering as the edges soften. Eventually, the clear outline disappears completely, leaving only liquid. Like this ice, everything around you, our bodies, thoughts, emotions, even the people we know and the possessions we cherish, is continuously shifting. Accepting impermanence doesn't cause defeat or sadness, but offers freedom, perspective, and appreciation for every fleeting moment. Interestingly, modern science increasingly supports many ideas Buddha discovered 2.5 millennia ago. Mindfulness, simply observing experience without judgment, actually reshapes our brains. Recent research using MRI scans found that consistent meditators develop measurable increases in their brain's gray matter, especially in areas linked to emotional regulation, memory, resilience, and empathy. Meditation isn't just relaxation or stress management. It cultivates genuine mental change that helps us better respond to life's inevitable hardships. But mindfulness doesn't exist purely as an internal practice. Compassion and active kindness toward others further augment inner peace. Let's consider one practical compassionate exercise known as loving kindness meditation. Imagine a difficult coworker, someone who continually irritates or frustrates you. What happens if you quietly spend 5 minutes wishing this person well in your imagination, hoping they find happiness, freedom, comfort? Even if nothing changes about their behavior, your own response gradually shifts toward tolerance and forgiveness. You reduce personal stress not by changing others, but subtly changing your own mental stance. This powerful idea has become central to many Western adaptations of mindfulness practices, such as John Kabat-Zinn's widely popular mindfulness-based stress reduction clinics. These structured programs spread point flash dash in clinics rapidly in hospitals, corporations, schools, and community centers, offering scientifically sound stress relief methods deeply rooted in ancient Buddhist insights. Yet, misunderstandings quickly arise. Meditation isn't about eliminating thoughts. That's simply impossible. Thoughts naturally arise and dissolve. The skill cultivated is in gently noticing thoughts, understanding their transient nature, and letting them pass without obsession or anger. Critiques also surface. Some ask, does mindfulness's inward-looking practice mean neglecting bigger societal issues, injustice, inequality? Critics worry excessive inward focus may breed indifference. Proponents argue, however, that genuine inner awareness actually encourages greater compassion and action toward alleviating human suffering everywhere in personal and public arenas alike. For a practical everyday mindfulness tip, here's a small yet powerful habit you can start today. Before opening your email inbox, pause. Consciously take 3 full breaths, noticing your ribcage expanding and releasing. This small act grounds your attention, preventing the immediate stress reaction we often feel staring at our crowded inbox. It's no coincidence pop culture references like the Jedi philosophy in Star Wars, echo similar principles. Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi frequently counsel young apprentices to stay present, avoid emotional extremes, and seek internal balance philosophies inspired directly by real-world mindfulness teachings. To clearly picture the effectiveness of mindfulness, consider this closing metaphor. Imagine a small snow globe freshly shaken up. The swirling snowflakes represent anxious, racing thoughts. Mindfulness doesn't physically stop the globe. Instead, it gently sets it down, allowing turbulence inside to naturally settle, revealing calm, stability, and clarity hidden beneath. Understanding inner balance and harmony naturally sets the stage as we move from personal peace towards social peace. How harmony is cultivated not only within ourselves, but among humans, families, and society, something ancient Confucian wisdom will insightfully illuminate next. Chapter 3. Confucian Harmony Rules for Community Living. Imagine yourself seated around a bustling dinner table in a warm, lively room. Lanterns painted red and gold hang gently overhead. Plates lay stacked high with carefully prepared dishes, steamed fish symbolizing prosperity, noodles stretched long for longevity. It's Chinese New Year, and, as tradition demands, conversation pauses. Eyes glance toward one person, usually the oldest or most respected in the room, the grandparent, the elder sibling, or perhaps a beloved teacher. Slowly, respectfully, this elder rises, lifts their small porcelain cup filled with amber tea or clear rice wine, and offers a toast blessing for health, harmony, and happiness. Only after their voice fills the room do others respond. Only after the elder sips do others drink. Why this unspoken rule, this quiet anticipation? Perhaps more than any explicit law, it's guided by an ancient vision perfected over many centuries. Confucian harmony. Over 2,500 years ago, China faced a long era of chaos and turmoil we now call the Warring States. Kingdoms tore each other apart over borders and ambition. Armies marched, fields burned, families scattered. Amid confusion, silencing swords with words rather than action, one wandering teacher traveled from place to place, town to town, village to village. His name was Confucius, or as the Chinese call him, Kongzia, curious man in simple robes who tirelessly gathered disciples. Rather than kings or generals, he believed true power lay in shared human kindness and thoughtful, ordered relationships. He taught virtue as a quiet strength, a gentle clarity, able to weave communities together and transform chaos into harmony. But how exactly was harmony possible, especially during turmoil? Confucius outlined 5 foundational relationships forming the cornerstone of all society. First, the bond between parent and child, shaped by affection, nurture, and respect. Parents care deeply. Children show gratitude in return. Second, the relationship between ruler and subject. Good governance breeds trust. People respond with loyal, generous service. Third comes husband and wife, each balancing complementary roles, mutually supportive, guided by respect and affection. Fourth, relations between older and younger siblings, defining clear bonds of care and courtesy, each side aware of duty and love. And finally, friendship between equals built upon mutual commitment, sincerity, and understanding. At the heart of all those relationships, Confucius placed one essential value he called Ren, a term not easily translated into English, but best understood as humane, warmth, generous, compassionate heart toward others. Ren, he taught, meant seeing others clearly, respecting their needs, and caring for them deeply. More than abstract philosophy, Ren appeared in small daily gestures of kindness. After a neighbor's health, patiently listening to a child's story, serving elders tea first, gathering quietly at family dinners. Confucius took these small gestures seriously. He called them rituals, or li. But rituals in Confucius's thinking were not complicated rites performed in grand temples. Rather, they were the small acts of everyday interaction that shaped human behavior subtly over time. The modest bow exchanged between neighbors was a ritual, polite greetings exchanged between friends, or carefully honoring elders, like the simple toast during New Year dinners. These gentle practices guided human relationships into a steady rhythm of trust. Confucius believed these small rituals could uplift entire communities if sincerely practiced. This sincerity and respect also came alive vividly in the Confucian virtue known as filial piety, respect and care toward parents and elders. Stories were told generation upon generation, emphasizing devoted sons and daughters, honoring their parents' comfort and happiness. One famous tale describes a dutiful son named Huang Xiang, who so cherished his parents that, during hot summers, he painstakingly cooled their pillows by fanning them before they rested their heads. Far from dismissing this as mere sentimental folklore, Confucian teachings valued this example, deeply symbolizing heartfelt, filial love and sincere devotion. But Confucian harmony wasn't simply personal or familial. It also shaped governance and society on larger scales. To Confucius and his later followers, virtue not lineage or wealth qualified someone to reign over others. This idea planted the seeds of a tradition long embraced across East Asia themed meritocratic civil service examination. Young village scholars, often without wealth or political connections, spent sleepless nights studying Confucian classics, their robes ink-stained from relentless preparation. Their success in rigorous imperial exams could lift them from poverty into government service. Meritocracy thus merged Confucian wisdom with political fairness, deeply influencing societies through generations. Yet harmony wasn't molded through exams alone. Confucius valued lifelong learning as a daily discipline. In the Analecta collection, capturing Confucian wisdom, Confucius himself explained, "The superior person sharpens the mind as one sharpens a blade. They refine it constantly lest it dull." He recommended continuous learning and regular self-reflection as life's true purpose. Confucius insisted improving oneself daily meant sincerely examining one's character, understanding virtues, and patiently cultivating kindness and self-awareness. It wasn't grand gestures, he argued, but small, daily acts of self-improvement that mattered most. Across East Asia today, from Hong Kong boardrooms to Tokyo subway cars, the imprint of Confucian ideas still endures strongly in day-to-day interactions. Consider modern business card exchanges practiced across East Asia. Notice how cards are presented respectfully with both hands, carefully examined, never casually pocketed or tossed aside. This modest ritual reveals a layer of personal dignity and mutual acknowledgement rooted in Confucian ideals of harmony and human respect. Yet today, we also recognize serious critiques of Confucian philosophy. Its insistence on hierarchy, particularly between ruler and subject, and husband and wife, has faced growing questions in modern democratic societies. Critics argue it perpetuates gender inequalities and rigid social roles, stifling personal choice and freedom. In response to these critiques, many scholars embraced a modern adaptation known as New Confucianism. They look carefully at blending ancient insight with contemporary values, democratic political reforms, gender equality, individual human rights all, without losing Confucius's core emphasis on humane compassion, obligation, and responsibility. But how does Confucianism challenge us personally in our own lives? Consider this practical test. Imagine sitting down and composing a thank you note to someone you've deeply respected, an elder mentor, whose encouragement has shaped your life ambitions. What tone would you choose? What carefully chosen words can meaningfully capture gratitude and respect? Writing that simple note becomes a Confucian gesture itself, a small act of deliberate thoughtfulness and careful attention reminding us all that virtue always lies in relationships. Confucian thought moves quietly beyond China's borders as well, shaping relationships far from its origins. In Korea, companies like Samsung or Hyundai incorporate subtle rituals of organizational hierarchy, respect, and solidarity deeply influenced by Confucian traditions. In Japan, classroom ethics focus heavily on responsibility toward classmates and broader society echoes resonating clearly from Confucius's ancient vision. Ultimately, Confucianism offers one powerful insight. Morality and virtue thrive most fully within genuine relationships, not in isolation. Humanity, kindness, sincerity, they all grow richly, only when expressed toward others. Like that first toast by a family elder at New Year dinner. The gesture may seem small, but its resonance fills neighborhoods, communities, and entire societies, gently holding people together. Yet, what happens if we strip away these relationships, remove those quiet guidelines and rituals Confucius found so vital? Without shared social glue, do we lose morality itself? Or can it survive another way? When rituals vanish and established, rules disappear. Existentialism emerges, asking what holds meaning together when all conventional structures fall away. Chapter 4. Existentialism, Freedom, and the Meaning Question. Imagine a student sitting alone at a table, flipping through pages of a thick university course catalog. Classes and majors line up neatly on every page. Philosophy, biology, art history, computer science, all neatly described, arranged, and numbered. Yet, somehow, none seem to offer clear direction. The student pauses, staring blankly, feeling a bit lost. This image captures perfectly what existential philosophers describe as the fundamental human condition. Freedom, so vast it feels overwhelming, and possibilities without built-in meanings. Where do we begin to choose? How do we even start? To explore existentialism, we must briefly look at its origins. The story begins in the 19th century with Søren Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher whose writings grew from deep personal reflections on faith and despair. Kierkegaard rejected organized religion and rational certainty. He saw authentic belief not as adopting inherited ideas, but as a profound leap of faith standing alone before uncertainty, deciding without external guarantee or proof. Kierkegaard's leap of faith means noticing life's uncertainties and choosing anyway, bravely, without assurance of success. Around the same time, in Russia, the novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky introduced readers to an angry and strange man, living underground, bitter at society, anxious about existence itself. Dostoevsky's Underground Man rejects society's comforting lies and easy optimism. Instead, he exposes the unsettling truth that rationality alone doesn't resolve the human thirst for meaning. Dostoevsky forced readers to confront something deeply disturbing, that freedom and consciousness, while profoundly liberating, can also be profoundly troubling unless we learn how to harness and direct them. These early voices led to existentialism becoming popular and widely discussed in Parisian cafes after World War II. Picture Paris in the late 1940s, with crowded cafes smoky from cigarettes, filled with young intellectuals debating intensely. Among them sat Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, joined by Albert Camus a few tables over, passionately discussing fundamental questions about human freedom after the devastation they'd witnessed. World War II had shaken trust in traditional structures. Religion, governments, science all had proven vulnerable, even dangerous. Sartre and his circle responded, not by despairing, but by calling for individual courage to build authentic meaning from the ground up. Existentialism's central assertion, made famous by Sartre, is straightforward yet challenging. Existence precedes essence. What could this mean? Simply put, you show up first without a manual or an instruction sheet explaining your life's purpose. You exist, but your life's meaning, or essence, does not come pre-programmed into you. You can't simply discover who you are, because your identity isn't fixed by some predetermined nature or divine plan. Rather, you must actively create meaning through choice, action, contemplation, and commitment. You are an author writing your life's narrative, even as you live through it. This freedom comes with immense responsibility, another key existentialist insight. Humans often blame their failings and wrongdoings on some abstract notion of human nature or external circumstances beyond their control. Existentialists reject this easier route of excuse. Sartre famously asserted that we are condemned to be free. There is no escape, hatch, no blaming biology or external fate. Recognizing your freedom means accepting total accountability for who you are and the effect your choices have. To fully embrace existentialism means to refute convenient excuses and recognize your decisions as yours to own. Yet this radical freedom can lead anyone into anxiety and dread, which existentialists openly acknowledged. But rather than being negative or harmful, they viewed anxiety as a healthy signal, like dizziness when standing at a cliff edge with infinite possibility opening before you. Anxiety tells you that you're awake and conscious, genuinely alive to the responsibilities that freedom entails. Anxiety isn't a flaw, it's the natural result of genuinely questioning and actively creating your life instead of sleepwalking through prearranged roles offered by family, institutions, or popular trends. Albert Camus illustrated this vividly through his concept of the absurd hero in the myth of Sisyphus, figure from Greek mythology sentenced by the gods to eternally push a huge boulder up a steep hill, only for it to roll down each time he nears the top. Camus imagined Sisyphus not despairing but smiling knowingly, aware of the absurdity of his condition. In Camus's eyes, we are all like Sisyphus, endlessly repeating tasks with uncertain or temporary purpose. Yet, by embracing absurdity, recognizing life's lack of inherent meaning without feeling discouraged, we become heroes rather than victims, courageously pushing the boulder each day, living richly in the face of uncertainty. Existentialists advocated authenticity above all, making decisions aligned closely with your truest values rather than hiding behind social pressure, fashionable trends, or inherited customs. Ask yourself, can you genuinely defend your job, your partner, the beliefs you've adopted? Or are they simply convenient, comfortable defaults chosen because society expects them? An authentic life is one chosen deliberately, fully open-eyed, even if unpopular or uncertain. Today, this existential feeling echoes loudly among younger generations, growing up amid job uncertainty, gig economies, and endless digital distractions. Memes about quarter-life crises flood social media, humorously highlighting confusion and anxiety about purpose uncertainty many young people face as they navigate a world with fewer secure paths. Existential struggle is as relevant now as in post-war Paris, maybe even more. Uncertainty isn't a modern invention, but the pace, pressures, economic conditions, and complexity of today's world intensify existential anxiety more acutely. However, existentialism isn't free from criticism. Many argue existential philosophers focus too narrowly on the individual, neglecting community bonds, networks of family and friendship, and responsibilities we owe collectively. Critics insist that meaning arises not in isolation, but from shared lives and joint stories within traditions that extend beyond personal choice. No one can fully author themselves from scratch, they say, because every person grows from deeply interwoven fabrics of relationships, duties, and community responsibilities. Yet there's another powerful dimension. Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl developed existential ideas into therapy called logotherapy during World War II, while imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. Frankl observed firsthand who survived and who did not, and saw clearly that survivors frequently possessed deeply personal senses of meaning. Frankl argued meaning itself was life-saving. His therapy helps patients clarify purpose and adopt responsibility, guiding them through suffering by discovering their own raison d'etre. Individuals finding transcendent meaning even in unbearable suffering. If existentialism resonates with you, it's best tested through action. Philosophers like Sartre and Camus were practical in this sense. Tonight, write down briefly your own personal creed. What makes your life worth living? What's genuinely valuable or purposeful? Tomorrow, consciously test that creed through actions, choices, attitudes, and experiences. Existential authenticity comes alive not merely as philosophy, but as lived, tested experience. In popular culture, the television series The Good Place beautifully touches on existential themes, especially in its final episodes. Characters struggle realistically with ultimate questions about authenticity, purpose, and human dignity. At series' end, characters explore uniqueness, choice, and courageous acceptance of possibility. 7 Uncertainties to forge meaningfully authentic lives. Existentialism in popular culture reminds us these philosophical ideas aren't abstract theories. They resonate because they're real, personal, and immediate. Ultimately, Sartre didn't say we had freedom. He said we're condemned to have it. Freedom isn't merely a gift, but our unavoidable task. We didn't ask for it, yet we are forced into it daily, choosing and living fully, actively writing purpose into life. But can absolute individual freedom be balanced with commitment to others, to the greatest happiness for the greatest number? How far should individual choice stretch, especially when balancing the good of communities and society? To fully understand this tension between freedom and the collective greatest good, we must shift our perspective from existential individualism toward utilitarian philosophy and ethics, examining how freedom meets community obligation. Chapter 5. Utilitarianism, Math of Happiness and Morals. Imagine standing beside a trolley track. Ahead, 5 people stand tied to the rails. The trolley races toward them, but next to you is a lever. Pull it, and the trolley diverts onto a sidetrack where only one person is tied down. This is the famous trolley problem, often posed by philosophers and scientists alike. You're the one decision maker. Do you pull the lever and actively cause 1 death, saving 5 lives? Or do you refuse to act and allow tragedy to unfold? This scenario is more than a curiosity. It reveals how you reason through right and wrong. Do simple numbers guide your ethics, or would a moral rule hold you back? 2 centuries ago, in London, philosopher Jeremy Bentham proposed a radical idea. Morality isn't hidden or mystical, it can be measured. Bentham spent his life focused on creating clear, practical ways to understand happiness and suffering. Actually, Bentham himself was so committed to practical utility even after death. His preserved skeleton sits today in a wooden and glass cabinet at University College London, called his auto icon. For Bentham, no sentimentality or mystery belonged in philosophy. Instead, morality should rely on facts, data, and reason. Bentham coined a memorable slogan: "The greatest happiness for the greatest number." His logic sounds appealingly straightforward. Imagine gathering up all pleasure and pain in the world, tallying joy and sorrow, almost like a financial balance sheet. Bentham even made it more precise through his invention, which he called the hedonic calculus. Hedonic means related to pleasure, and calculus is simply a system to add and subtract carefully. The hedonic calculus asks questions about any choice you're facing. How intense will the pleasures and pains be? How long will they last? And how likely are they to happen? Bentham recommended carefully weighing these factors against each other. A decision is morally right if it increases overall happiness compared with the alternatives. But perhaps you've already sensed a weakness. Not all pleasures seem equal. Is listening to Beethoven or reading a great novel on par with eating a jelly donut? Another thinker, philosopher John Stuart Mill, noticed this very issue. Bentham's pure numerical method missed something vital. Mill, bit by bit, improved utilitarianism, pushing its logic further. He argued that greater happiness isn't purely about quantity, but also quality. According to Mill, intellectual and emotional pleasures, such as friendship, learning, and creativity, are superior to mere bodily pleasures of food and sleep. Famously, Mill said, "It is better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied." Humans wouldn't willingly trade a chance at the deeper pleasures of self-development merely to maximize simple bodily satisfaction. Utilitarianism didn't remain just an academic idea, transformed into deeply impactful real-world action. Bentham himself campaigned vigorously for social reforms based precisely on quantifying all suffering. He pushed for prison reform, believing that punishment should discourage wrongdoing without unnecessarily causing harm. His view: punishment should rehabilitate, not torment. He also advocated more humane conditions, clear laws, and fair sentencing. Utilitarian principles have deeply influenced campaigns for animal welfare too. Since animals clearly suffer, utilitarians argue that animal suffering matters morally, just like human suffering does. This idea shaped entire generations of animal rights activists, advocating against factory farming and unnecessary animal testing. More recently, utilitarian logic has paved the way for effective altruism, a movement emphasizing scientific evidence and reasoning to maximize charitable impact. Effective altruists carefully research how best to save lives and reduce suffering. They ask practical questions like, will donating to mosquito nets in malaria-prone regions save more lives than building a new museum exhibit in your hometown? Utilitarian ideals drive them explicitly to choose actions that provide the greatest measurable good. But let's pause once more for a thought experiment. Philosopher Robert Nozick introduced the idea of the experience machine. Imagine scientists build a device you could permanently plug into to live endless, perfect happiness. While plugged in, you'd never worry, never face hardship, always feel joyful, and never know that it wasn't reality. Would you plug yourself in? According to Nozick, many of us hesitate. Why? Because some deeper values authenticity, purpose, truth matter to us beyond simple happiness and pleasure. This experiment highlights utilitarianism's challenges clearly. Happiness, isolated and separated from meaningful experiences, doesn't always seem enough. Meanwhile, utilitarian mathematics faces another critique known as the tyranny of the majority. Imagine a society that suddenly decides enslaving or oppressing a minority increases overall happiness significantly. According to pure numerical utilitarianism, wouldn't this also become morally acceptable? Certainly not, we protest. But the strict arithmetic of utilitarianism doesn't always protect minority rights. Facing this objection, utilitarians introduce a more flexible approach known as rule utilitarianism, suggesting some general moral rules ought to be followed because doing so reliably enhances overall well-being in the long run. For example, rules about justice, human rights, and fairness are valuable precisely because they consistently promote lasting happiness and stability even if short-term exceptions seem tempting. Today, these very questions echo significantly in modern debates about artificial intelligence ethics. Engineers teaching advanced AI systems must embed specific utility functions, telling machines what outcomes to optimize for, whether profit, fairness, or general happiness. AI alignment, researchers, the people trying to keep future AI safe, often ground their discussions explicitly in utilitarian concepts. After all, If we're teaching machines ethical decision-making, we must clarify precisely what we value. The conversations around alignment draw extraordinarily heavily on Bentham and Mill's framework, how to weigh competing interests, predict long-term happiness consequences, and avoid unexpected catastrophic outcomes from seemingly good intentions. But you don't need advanced artificial intelligence or giant philosophical puzzles to test utilitarianism yourself. A small personal experiment can reveal the essence of its arithmetic. Suppose you have $10 to spend today purely to improve the world's welfare. How do you spend it? Maybe buying lunch for someone hungry nearby feels intuitively meaningful. But donating online to an organization distributing mosquito nets or contributing tiny shares toward worming treatments in low-income countries could measurably change or even save someone's life. Asking this question helps sharpen your thoughts about where your actions practically deliver the greatest good. From comic books to television shows to philosophy courses, utilitarianism's echoes resound in culture. Star Trek fans might recall Spock famously saying, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." Here is an explicitly utilitarian principle stated clearly in a popular story: weighing the lives and well-being of a larger number against a smaller one, and choosing accordingly. Yet utilitarianism isn't the only moral tool we hold. Just as we choose the right tool in a toolbox for the task at hand, we might shift among multiple ethical lenses like virtue ethics, Kant's duty-based philosophy, existentialism, and so forth, depending on what best aids our decisions. It's helpful, then, to consider utilitarianism alongside other moral philosophies, each viewpoint informing and balancing the others. So here's a thought to take with you this week. Utilizing a practical philosophy depends not on abstract agreement, but active daily decisions. Pick one practice mentioned. Today may be the $10 test, carefully measuring happiness or assessing charitable impacts through an effective altruism site. Try putting it into real action. Notice how closely aligning your behavior with clear, rational moral principles can illuminate everyday decisions. Afterwards, reflect and share this small but crucial experiment. Because philosophy isn't merely ideas and thought experiments. It's how those ideas directly shape our real-life choices and the world around us.